Tokyo are just rewriting the rule book. We aren't just looking at a win here. This feels more like a structural realignment of Japanese political power.
It's absolutely a seismic event. I think even the word landslide kind of undersells it.
Yeah.
When you really look at the numbers, the Liberal Democratic Party securing 316 seats on their own, you have to go back to the black and white newsreel era to find any kind of precedent for that.
That's the stat that just jumped right out at me. 316 out of 465. For a single party to hold a two-thirds majority like that. You said it, we're talking 1947.
Exactly. The very founding moments of the modern Japanese parliament.
That's incredible.
And that 1947 context is so crucial because that was the time of system building. To pull off a supermajority of that size today in this fragmented modern media world, it's almost statistically impossible. And yet they did it.
And they didn't do it alone, which is where the math gets even more interesting. You have the LDP's own dominance, and then you add in their coalition partners, the Japan Innovation Party, the JIP.
Right, they pick up another 36 constituencies.
Which brings that coalition total to, what, a staggering 352 seats.
Yeah, 52.
That's not just a governing majority. That's, I mean, that's a legislative blank check.
It is. And the JIP isn't some silent partner here, which I think a lot of the international coverage is missing.
Oh, for sure. They treat them like vote padding.
It's a massive oversight.
Yeah.
The JIP are, you could say, the sharks swimming alongside the LDP whale. They're actually more hawkish on defense and even more aggressive on neoliberal economic reforms than the LDP mainstream.
So by relying on them, the entire government's center of gravity just shifts.
It shifts hard to the right.
Okay, so the mission for this deep dive seems pretty clear then. We need to figure out how Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, Japan's first female PM, managed this just months after taking office. We have to look at the market reaction, which was just wild on Monday, and the geopolitical game she's playing with the U.S.
And, maybe most critically, we need to ask what she's going to do with all this power. Because the economic gamble she's about to take is incredibly high stakes. And that pink pen branding that got her here, it might be hiding some very, very sharp policy edges.
Let's start with the money then, because the markets clearly loved what they saw. Monday morning, the Nikkei 225. I mean, it didn't just open strong, it exploded.
It did, surging over 5% in early trading and crossing the 57,000 mark, first time in history.
And that 57,000 number, that's more than just a number, right? It's psychological.
Oh, completely. It signals that maybe, just maybe, the decades of stagnation, that whole lost decade story is finally getting put to bed.
But how much of this is just a relief rally? You know, the markets were terrified of her predecessor, Shigeru Ishiba.
That's a huge part of it. A huge part.
He was talking about capital gains, tax hikes, constantly apologizing for scandals.
The market was basically pricing in a muddle-through scenario with Ishiba. Gridlock, tax increases, the works. Takaichi's win just wipes those tax fears right off the table.
But it's more than just relief. I saw that quote from investment analyst Yuka Murosek calling the win additional fuel for an existing bull trend.
Additional fuel, yeah. That implies the fire was already burning.
All right.
And it was. The corporate governance reforms in Japan have actually been working. Companies are unlocking value. But investors were waiting for political stability to really go all in.
And Takaichi doesn't just offer stability. She offers a mandate.
A mandate to push pro-business policies without watering them down. She doesn't have to negotiate with the opposition in committee.
When you have 352 seats, you don't reach across the aisle.
You just pass the bill.
Exactly. And that speed is what global capital loves to see. They see a Japan that can finally move fast.
She's basically positioned herself as the heir to Abenomics, but on steroids. Aggressive spending, monetary easing, deregulation, all of it.
Okay, but, and this is where I want to pivot to the how. You don't win a supermajority just by promising deregulation to stockbrokers. There was a cultural thing happening on the ground here that feels, well, unexpected.
The Takaichi phenomenon, yeah.
I was reading the demographic reports, and she swept the youth vote, the LDP, the party of old men in gray suits. How does a 60-something conservative hardliner become an icon for 20-somethings?
It's a total masterclass in personal branding. She bypassed all the traditional media filters.
Is it the pink pen thing?
Chuckles. Yes, the pink pens and the handbags. It sounds so superficial, but you have to understand, in a political culture that really values conformity, her insistence on these hyper-feminine, distinct accessories, It became a symbol.
A symbol of defiance.
Exactly.
It's interesting because it acts as a softener, doesn't it? If a man stood up talking about revising the Constitution and expanding the military, he sounds like some scary nationalist from the 1930s.
Right.
But Takaichi does it holding a pink pen, and suddenly it feels modern, or at least different.
That is the absolute genius of it. She used the first female prime minister narrative to shield herself from the usual criticisms of being a hawk. She was signaling to the youth, I am different. I am breaking the glass ceiling.
While at the very same time signaling to the ultra-conservatives, don't worry, I'm going to protect traditional values and the emperor.
Correct. She threaded a needle that, frankly, most analysts thought was impossible. She locked down the conservative base by promising to revise the pacifist constitution while winning over all those floating voters who just wanted someone who looked and sounded strong.
It reminds me a little of the Iron Lady archetype. Thatcher used a similar kind of trickster traditional values, but packaged in a way that felt revolutionary for its time.
The comparison is a good one. But unlike Thatcher, Takaichi is operating in a Japan that is facing a demographic collapse. And that leads us straight to the reality check. The vibes are great, the pens are pink, but the national balance sheet is just blood red.
This is where I want to dig in. The mechanics of her economic high-wire act. She's promising a responsible yet aggressive fiscal policy. That just sounds like an oxymoron to me.
It does, doesn't it?
You're either balancing the books or you're spending money you don't have. Which one is it?
In practice, it's the latter. She is effectively doubling down on stimulus. She's pledged tax cuts to help with the cost of living, while also increasing government spending.
So stimulus and tax cuts, it's the classic populist playbook. But the context here is, Japan is not sitting on a surplus. The debt-to-GDP ratio is already the highest in the developed world.
It is. And this is where the responsible part of her slogan just kind of falls apart when you look closely. Critics are looking at the bond market and asking, okay, who is going to buy all this new debt?
If she issues massive amounts of new bonds to fund this, yields have to rise.
And if yields rise, the cost of servicing that enormous pile of existing debt just explodes.
It's a debt trap.
A classic debt trap. The Bank of Japan has been on this tightrope for years, keeping rates artificially low. Takaichi is now basically jumping up and down on that tightrope. She's betting the stimulus will create enough growth to pay for itself before the bond market revolts.
But the average voter isn't looking at bond yields. I saw those BBC interviews from the polling stations. They're talking about the price of eggs. They're talking about rent.
Exactly. Japan has shifted from a deflationary mindset, which it had for decades, to an inflationary survival mode. The cost of living is the #1 issue, full stop. Takaichi won because she acknowledged that pain and promised to throw money at the problem.
It feels like a short-term fix for a long-term structural rot, though. The demographics are what they are. Aging population, shrinking workforce. Throwing cash at that doesn't create more workers.
It absolutely doesn't, and that's the heavy anchor dragging on this whole new era she's talking about. You can stimulate demand all you want, but if your supply of labor is shrinking, you just get more inflation. Takaichi is buying time. She knows it. If she doesn't deliver economic relief and fast, that supermajority will evaporate in the next election cycle.
She actually acknowledged this, didn't she? I think she told Kyodo News she bears an extremely heavy responsibility. It didn't sound like a victory lap. It sounded like someone staring up at a huge mountain.
She knows the expectations are sky high, and that market euphoria we talked about, that's a double-edged sword. If she falters, if that stimulus gets bogged down, or if inflation spikes even further, that capital will flee just as fast as it rushed in.
Now, there's a huge external factor here that might be her ace in the hole, or maybe it's an accelerant for the fire. We have to talk about the geopolitical angle, specifically her relationship with Donald Trump.
The Trump-Takaichi axis, as some people are starting to call it.
It really stood out to me. Usually you get, a standard diplomatic congratulations tweet. But Trump went on Truth Social and called it an honor, with a capital H, to endorse her. He promised strong support. It feels personal.
It is personal, and it's also ideological. You have to look back at her diplomatic debut in October, just 1 week after she took office.
Oh, the visuals were so striking. I remember seeing that footage. Trump visiting Japan, standing in front of thousands of U.S. troops.
And he was fist-pumping. He was literally hyping her up to the crowd like a rock star. That is not normal diplomatic protocol.
So why does he like her so much? Is it just Flattery, or is there a genuine policy alignment there?
It's the nationalism.
Yeah.
Takaichi speaks Trump's language. It's Japan first.
Mm.
She's skeptical of globalist institutions. She wants a strong military. She wants to counter China. Trump sees a kindred spirit in her, a leader who prioritizes national sovereignty over some multilateral consensus.
So for Takaichi, this is just a massive win. In a region where you've got North Korea launching missiles and China expanding its navy, having the U.S. president so explicitly in your corner, that's the ultimate deterrent.
It is. It sends a clear signal to Beijing and Pyongyang that the U.S.-Japan alliance isn't just a treaty on a piece of paper. It's a personal alliance between two leaders.
But doesn't that make things complicated with Japan's other neighbors? South Korea, for example. Takaichi is a known revisionist on history. She visits the Yasukuni Shrine. Having Trump back her so loudly might just embolden her to take stances that really alienate Seoul.
And that is the friction point. The U.S. State Department wants Japan and South Korea to get along. But Trump and Takaichi are both nationalists, and nationalism, well, it tends to clash with your neighbors. Takaichi, I think, is banking on the idea that a strong Japan is more important to the U.S. than a polite Japan.
Which brings us to the ultimate question. We've established she has the numbers 352 seats. She has the economic momentum, the Nikkei at 57,000. She has geopolitical cover from Trump.
All the stars have aligned for her. Perfectly.
So what's the end game? Because you don't build a supermajority like this just to tweak a few tax rates. We mentioned the Constitution earlier, Article 9.
The Pacifist Clause. This has been the third rail of Japanese politics for 70 years. It literally bans Japan from maintaining war potential.
But Takaichi ran on changing it, not just reinterpreting it, but actually amending the text to clarify the status of the self-defense forces.
She did. And for the first time in history, the pro-revision forces, the LDP, the GIP, and a few others, they had the two-thirds majority in both houses of parliament that you need to initiate a national referendum on the Constitution.
That's the threshold. That's what they've been chasing for decades.
And they finally have it. This is why that GIP coalition is so critical. The JIP wants this revision even more than some of the doves in the LDP do.
So here's the thought I want to leave everyone with today. We're watching a country that has been officially, constitutionally pacifist since 1947. Takaichi has her economic mandate. The markets are distracted by the stock boom. The youth are distracted by the cool branding.
It's the perfect smokescreen.
Exactly. So with that economic mandate secure, will the political transformation of Japan's military be her next big move? We're not just talking about buying a few more missiles. We are talking about Japan legally and constitutionally becoming a normal military power again.
If she pulls that trigger, it changes the security architecture of the entire Asia-Pacific region overnight.
And with 352 seats in her pocket and Donald Trump cheering her on, who really is going to stop her? That's the reality the region is waking up to this week.
It's going to be a fascinating few years to watch.
We'll certainly be watching to see if those pink pens end up signing a new constitution. Thanks for listening to this deep dive.
Thank you.